welcome to History Talks. I'm your host, Will. This is Sebastian. In this episode, we continue our series on ancient Rome, and we will be discussing the Second Punic War. So, Sebastian, what led to the Second Punic War?
Hannibal Barca was the son of Hamilcar Barca and became a rising general within the Carthaginian army. You see, Carthage had captured much of Iberia, what is now Spain, all the way up to the Ebro River. The other half of the Ebro was given by treaty to Rome.
Okay.
However, there was one city on the east coast of Spain that was not Roman per se, but it was a city-state aligned with Rome. Now, Hannibal had long been opposed to Rome and viewed this as an opportunity to strike.
Ah, I see. So he's encroaching on Rome's, technically not their borders, but encroaching on a boundary that impacts Rome.
And soon he attacks the city and lays siege to it, and this becomes war as the Romans were sworn to protect this city, and they view it as a violation of a treaty that the general Hasdrubal had signed 6 years before.
Okay.
Now, Hannibal, after capturing the city and marching up through Roman Spain, including a city which he renamed Barcelona after his surname Barca, he takes an interesting approach. You see, he has a couple options. He could try sailing to Italy, he could stay in Spain, or he could go to Carthage and then sail up through Sicily. However, since the First Punic War, the Romans had built a navy that was actually larger than Carthage's.
Wow.
And an attack on Sicily would be expected. So Hannibal does the unexpected and decides to cross the Alpine mountains into Italy.
Wow, okay, so he leads his army through the Alps, including elephants.
Yes.
And this is really interesting because prior to the First Punic War, Carthage was the naval power of the Mediterranean. They were a sea-based mercantile civilization that had this naval presence particularly across the southern and the eastern part of the Mediterranean. And prior to that, Rome had a very limited navy. But during the First Punic War, Rome built up their navy for purposes of fighting Carthage, right? And now Hannibal, the general of Carthage's army, was now not attacking Rome through the expected route of going to the island of Sicily, but he said, we're gonna go through the roughest terrain possible on land and strike Italy from the north.
Yes.
Or strike Rome from the north.
Yes.
The Italian peninsula.
And it was an arduous journey. Many elephants and soldiers died, whether due to freezing or falling off a cliff. However, he gained one important advantage, and that is the alliance of numerous Gallic tribes. Some simply disliked Rome. Others were a bit more hostile, but he made an example of one particular tribe, and that caused those tribes to fall in line.
Wow, okay, so he was approaching this from both angles. One was he was using fear, right? Essentially, join me or I'll destroy you, right? And the other side is he's using this motive of, join me and let's attack Rome together. I know Rome is your ancient enemy.
And soon Hannibal finds his army in the Po River Valley, which shocks Rome because they had expected to find him in Spain or possibly Sicily. But now he was right on the doorstep of Italy. And now Rome was scrambling to try to respond. And at first they believe they can defeat Hannibal. They send an army to intercept Hannibal and defeat him. Part backed up by an army led by a man named Scipio. However, this first army is crushed at the Battle of Triclinium, which Hannibal then captures. Triclinium, Hannibal has an interesting approach to capturing Roman cities. He's basically like, hey, if you surrender, are compliant, then I'll, be merciful. I'll let you maintain your way of life. But if you, continue resisting, then I'll crush you.
Okay, so basically he says, submit to me or die.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your options.
Yeah. And after hearing about this defeat, Scipio tries to abandon his camp and retreat to a different camp. However, part of the Roman army is Gallic conscripts. Now, these Gallic conscripts, they hear that Hannibal's got Gauls in his army, and they know what has happened to the Romans who have faced Hannibal. So they rise up against the Roman army, killing numerous soldiers, and to go join Hannibal.
So Rome is in some serious trouble at this point, because not only do they have Hannibal coming down at them, taking their cities, either taking them, having them submit to him, or he destroys them. They also have the Gauls that they thought might be sided with them, turn on them, and join Hannibal.
Yeah. And so Rome, in response, they gather 8 legions, the 8 legions of Rome, and they gather both consuls to join their armies to try to face down Hannibal at Cannae. Normally the legions would be split up so that each consul could, individually command their legion. However, with the armies being joint now, the decision was that each general would take turns commanding the army. And
okay, so you have 2 consuls. Normally, each one has their own army. They're geographically separated, so normally a consul has complete command over their geographically separated army. But in this case, the consuls came together because the threat of Hannibal was the greatest threat they were facing. It was too significant for them to be anywhere else, so they came together and took turns commanding the army, the combined army. Yeah,
and they had disagreements over how exactly to deal with Hannibal, but eventually the more aggressive general attacked, and this leads to the disastrous Battle of Cannae, where despite the Romans having better armor and stuff like that, Hannibal manages to defeat the Roman army. He uses a tactic that's a little bit more standard, as time goes on. But for the time, the Romans didn't expect it. He used double envelopment. This involves splitting the army into 2. This way, you can attack from 2 sides. If the enemy army is, in massed formation, then this can be a quite effective tactic for encirclement, and that's just what happened.
Okay, so his army would be thinner then. But because it was separated out, but it enveloped the Roman army. So the Roman army is used to facing one direction, I'm assuming, in one direction, and they came up around the sides, and the Roman army, they caught them off guard there.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. You have the 2 Roman consuls normally are running separate armies, they combine while Hannibal is doing the opposite. He's splitting his army into two so that he can envelop them.
Yeah. And after the disastrous defeat at Cannae, Rome finds itself losing in almost every city that Hannibal touches, and unable to really come up with a counter to Hannibal's army. The closest thing is that, like, whatever they can spare can hold off Hasdrubal in Iberia. However, one general does come up with something that seems to work for a time, that being Fabius. Now, Fabian tactics are a proper school of tactics still studied today, and you can basically think of them as a sort of cousin to guerrilla warfare. Basically, the idea is that you just pick off soldiers, do not predict where the enemy is going, so you can deny them their supplies, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And it's slow and arduous, but because they couldn't face Hannibal head on, it seemed the most effective. However, the Senate eventually was done with Fabian tactics. They were done with Fabius, partially because it's basically a war of attrition. It was probably going to be victorious, but it was also taking long. And for another thing, the Romans had this philosophy of you should face the enemy head on. You should be brave, and they viewed Fabian tactics as quite cowardly, quite contradictory to that Roman value.
Okay, I understand. So the Roman Senate had really two objections. One was ideological. One was this is not the Roman way. We don't sneak around. We face our enemies head on. And the other one was a matter of practicality, where they said, well, maybe this will work in the long run, but in the meantime, our cities are being ruled by Hannibal. We need to kick this guy off our peninsula.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do they do next?
So after a while, they eventually, a man named Scipio Africanus eventually has the idea of sailing to North Africa. Instead of continuing to go on the offensive, they surprise the Carthaginians at Utica. It takes a while to capture the city, but eventually they do, and now they have a beachhead not too far from the city of Carthage.
Oh, okay.
And this scares the Carthaginian leadership, in Carthage, who then recall Hannibal back from Italy to go defend the city.
Wow, okay, so that's quite a strategy. So Hannibal is dominant on the Italian peninsula. He crosses the Alps, starts marching from the north. He's taken Roman cities. Rome can't defeat him in direct combat. They're trying this guerrilla-style warfare against them, but that maybe it'll slow him down. It might work over time, but it's not doing the job the Romans need to have done. So what do they do instead? They say, well, hey, we've got this guy coming across the Italian peninsula, coming at our Roman capital, destroying us. We can't face him head on. So instead what we'll do is we'll go down to Africa, to his capital, and we'll launch an offensive, and we'll attack there. Yeah. And it sounds like it had the intended effect, which was that that Hannibal's superiors or the leaders in Carthage call him back.
Yeah. Hannibal is initially hesitant to go back, but eventually he goes to defend the city, but by the time he arrives, it's too late, and the Romans are able to repel his attempts to stop the Romans, and eventually they win the battle and win the war.
Wow, that's quite a dramatic turnaround. So they went from being on the brink of having Hannibal and his Carthaginian army just overrunning them across the Italian peninsula to saying, let's go in the offensive and attack Carthage, and it works. And I imagine you said Hannibal hesitant to come down to Africa because he's probably thinking, I'm about to take... I can take Rome. I'm so successful here. Don't pull me away from this. But eventually he has to get pulled back.
Yeah.
Or he gets pulled back to try to defend. But it sounds like Rome is prepared for him. At this point, Rome has a more powerful navy. Right? Yeah. They're already in Carthage. And then, Hannibal got to Italy on land. So he doesn't have ships he brought with him. So it sounds like they've got a big advantage. They took advantage of this, and what sounds like they were successful. So so Hannibal is defeated.
Yes.
Carthage is defeated. What happens?
After this, the penalties for Carthage and its allies are massive. Carthage loses all of its land except for the city itself and a bit of surrounding territory. The Carthaginian Empire is reduced to rubble, basically, and all that remains is a city that barely survives.
Wow. So after the Second Punic War, there was a Third Punic War. What happened there?
Not long after the Second Punic War, there were still memories of Hannibal and there were still calls to, there were still fears of Carthage coming back or just something happening, anything happening. One senator infamously ended every single speech he made with Carthago delende est, which means Carthage must be destroyed.
Wow.
And so they did. In fact, we have practically no records from Carthage itself. We only have what the Romans and Greeks said, because they destroyed everything. The people, the buildings, the records, even the land. They salted the fields, declaring that nothing would ever grow there again.
Wow, that's brutal. So by the end of the Second Punic War, Rome had thoroughly defeated Carthage. They lost their empire. They simply had one city left. And then Rome said, that's not enough. We need to just completely annihilate these people, wipe them off the map, destroy all the surrounding lands. There's no way they can ever come back.
Yeah.
And remove all records, other than maybe the records they wrote of being victorious and destroying them.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And for once, Rome had established itself as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. Imperium Romanum ruled over the Mare Nostrum.
Yeah, so that's quite a shift from where we started at the beginning of the last episode, which was before the First Punic War. Before the First Punic War, Carthage was the dominant naval power in the Mediterranean. They had a massive amount of land especially around the southern part, the eastern part, and then even up into Spain. So the west spanned east to west across the south. They had naval dominance. They had Sicily. By the end of the Third Punic War, Rome was the naval power. Rome was the dominant power in the Mediterranean, and Carthage ceased to exist.
Yeah.
That is quite a shift. All right, well, did you have any final words you wanted to say about the Punic Wars?
No, I do not.
All right, well, good job, Sebastian. Thank you all for tuning in, and we hope to see you in the next episode of the History Talks as we continue our series on ancient Rome.